Welcome back, Cubs. Direwolf here. And today we need to talk about how you are not responsible for the opinions of other people who support or agree with you. In my opinion, that is common sense. However, I routinely see the argument and have had it used against me that if someone agrees with you, supports you, or watches your content, that it is now your responsibility to call out and denounce any opinions that they hold that you do not agree with. Or that somehow when you produce content that they also agree with, that is somehow supporting everything else that they believe in. I know that sounds absurd, but the YouTubers Sean and Jen made that same argument as recent as 20 August on Twitter when he suggested that the YouTuber Chris Raygun was making fascist-friendly content based on the fact that the well-known white nationalist Richard Spencer had tweeted out support for Chris, PewDiePie, and JonTron. Sean and Jen are suggesting that because unsavory characters like Richard Spencer support Chris Raygun's content, that Chris Raygun's content must be supportive of the terrible things that Richard Spencer believes. I'm sorry, Sean and Jen, that's not how that works. Just because person A agrees with some or all of the things that person B says, it does not mean that person B agrees with anything that person A believes in. Just because person A supports person B, it doesn't mean person B is in any way associated to person A, or that he even likes person A. I'm sorry to make this simple stupid, but I'm really getting tired of hearing this argument. I shouldn't have to explain this, and I shouldn't have to be drawing pictures. Don't get me wrong, I like drawing pictures for you guys, but I'd rather be drawing something different. But apparently it has to be said because it is a common tactic on both the left and the right. Though I would say it's been far easier to find examples from the left-owned media, such as the litany of articles from the mainstream media during the election that tried to associate Trump with Nazis because they supported him. Even though Trump has made multiple statements opposed to white nationalism and opposed to any form of racism, and even though he's never made one statement in support of white nationalism, news sources would make statements like this one from the Daily Kos that if these people, referring to Nazis, think Donald Trump is their savior and standard bearer for their cause, nothing else needs to be said about him to diminish his chances of becoming president. The author of this article was trying to say that because the founder of the website Stormfront, a neo-Nazi publication, supported Trump, meant that somehow Trump or his policies were pro-neo-Nazi. By that logic, when the Daily Stormer, another white nationalist publication online, supported the Wall Street Journal, it must mean that the Wall Street Journal is pro-neo-Nazi. Yes, I realize they changed their banner to mock the Wall Street Journal, but the point is, you don't control who supports you. Your beliefs are not defined by those who agree with you. Furthermore, in the US election, there was no white nationalist running for president. It only makes sense that a white nationalist would want to endorse the more right-leaning of the two candidates. But just because they endorse Trump, it doesn't mean that Trump believes in what they believe, or they support Trump's policies for the same reasons. Because you see, there's more than one reason to want to have better control of your immigration. It doesn't have to be because you want a white ethno-state, which means making a country for only white people, which is the white nationalist wet dream. However, that is not Trump's motivation for controlling immigration. His motivation is for national security. You see, they support his policy, but for a different reason. But that doesn't stop the MSM from continually calling Trump a Nazi sympathizer and trying to derail his agenda, with repeated demands to denounce hatred and bigotry that he's already denounced in the past and has never shown support for. Like this article from The Atlantic that says, "Why won't Trump denounce his anti-Semitic supporters?" where they criticize him for failing to vocally denounce the endorsement of white supremacists like David Duke, even though he already had vocally denounced the Grand Wizard of the KKK, David Duke, several days before the interview with Jake Tapper. Why must he continually defend himself and repeat the statements over and over again that just because a white nationalist supports him, that he does not support them? This article went on to criticize Trump for not calling out anti-Semitic jokes and threats from trolls online, directed towards the author of an inaccurate hit piece that was aimed at Trump's wife. When Wolf Blitzer asked Trump about the backlash, Trump apparently thought that a news agency's smear campaign against his wife was more important to comment on than nameless trolls. Trump shouldn't have to waste his time condemning every single offensive troll that supports him. However, it is his duty to set the record straight when a news agency abuses their power to lie about his wife. And just because he chose to speak about that more important issue, it doesn't mean that he supports the trolls. And when Richard Spencer praised Trump at a white nationalist rally in Washington, there came another flood of demands from the news networks for Trump to denounce white nationalism again. They criticized him for taking 2 days to respond, as though it was his responsibility to drop what he was doing, leading our country, to respond to and condemn every unsavory person who supports him within hours. And when he did respond, repeating the same statement he's made before, that he continues to denounce racism of any kind, and that he was elected because he will be a leader of every American, which to me is a far more powerful and all-encompassing message that not only denounces every white nationalist before and after Richard Spencer, but also every black nationalist and everyone else who believes in identity politics based on race. Trump is essentially saying, I don't need to call out every individual person who's racist, who supports me, I am opposed to all of them. And the most recent example of the mainstream media trying to associate Trump with Nazis, by guilt by association. After a violent clash between several white nationalist groups and a much larger group of Antifa and far-left regressive protesters, which led to many people being injured and the death of Heather Hayes. For more specific details on the Charlottesville riots, please check out the video, linked in the description. Trump's response to this event was to condemn the violence on many sides, which is consistent with his previous claims that he's opposed to bigotry of any kind, because in my opinion, the far left and the far right have both shown racial bigotry. And even though the far left has done more damage and more violence in the name of their bigotry, both the far left and far right have both been violent in the name of their racism. Of course, for Trump's critics, this condemnation was not enough. And of course, they brought out the same old tired argument, that because of the former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke celebrated Trump for his courage in making his statements, that because David Duke supported the statements made by Trump, that somehow Trump's statements did not include white nationalists, or that they were in some way supportive of the white nationalists, when indeed they were exactly opposed to them. You see, when Trump says he condemns the violence on both sides, he's condemning the violence of the white nationalists and also Antifa, and any group like them. He's looking at the big picture and saying that hatred, bigotry, and violence is bad no matter what side it comes from. And it doesn't matter what David Duke says, because David Duke's support for Trump does not change what Trump says, or what he believes, or what he means. Trump has already condemned and disavowed David Duke specifically, and white nationalists multiple times. But still, regressive leftist hacks like John Oliver accused Donald Trump of feeding the Nazi sentiment, saying that Nazis are like cats. If they like you, it's probably because you're feeding them. That's not how that works, John Oliver. Just because they support him does not mean he supports them or their message. Just like when CNN falsely suggested that because some white nationalists on the alt-right support Milo, a gay Jew who has a thing for black men, that it meant that Milo supported white nationalists or Nazis, despite the fact that Milo's beliefs are antithetical to white nationalism, and despite the fact that many white nationalists and neo-Nazis hate him, and many have even protested at his events. The very well-known white nationalist Andrew Oglen of the Daily Stormer made it very clear that Milo did not support white nationalism and that they should not support him. But this did not stop the mainstream media or regressive leftists from saying that because some Nazis agree with some things he says, that he must support Nazis. That is not how that works. Even if Hitler himself agreed with some things that Milo said, it does not mean that Milo agrees with Hitler. It doesn't mean he's friends with or hanging out with Nazis. It means that some Nazis agree with some things he says. If you think that means that he is a Nazi sympathizer, then by that same logic, so is the ACLU. Because the very left-leaning ACLU supported both Milo Yiannopoulos and the Unite the Right rally, and their rights to assemble and their right to free speech. The ACLU were instrumental in making sure the Unite the Right rally even happened in the first place. They did not do this because they support Nazis or white nationalists. They did this because they support free speech. They did it because they realized if you take away the freedom of speech from one group, it can be taken away from any group, including themselves. Lee Rowlands from the ACLU says the American Civil Liberties Union defends free speech, even if it's hateful. And you know what? That's the same claim the white nationalists and the Nazis say. And they thanked the ACLU for their support. And you know what? No one asked the ACLU to disavow the white nationalist support of free speech. Because it would be stupid to say that because white nationalists agree with the ACLU on one thing, that's a reflection of what the ACLU believes. It would be idiotic to say that the ACLU is sympathetic to the white nationalist cause, just because some white nationalists agree with them on free speech. It's just as stupid to label everyone right of SJW as being a Nazi because they have some political agreement with white nationalists. Just because you agree with free speech does not mean you agree with white nationalism or Nazism. Do not be fooled by or distracted by these false claims of guilt by association. And my cubs, when you are arguing, be careful not to blame someone for what someone else believes. Dire Wolf out.
Where will we see that we're finally free?
Thank you for watching, Cubs. I hope you liked the video. If you'd like to help support the channel, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you'd like to support the channel financially, I would greatly appreciate your support on Patreon. The link is in the description. Also, check us out on VidMe. Direwolf out.